And good evening to you all from my home here in the French countryside, ready to share with you another conversation. We're celebrating photography this week on Viking.TV, and my guest today, who is joining me from his home in Norway, is a photographer and a visual artist who divides his time between the big city and a remote and rugged island high up in the Arctic Circle. He draws his inspiration from the Norwegian land and seascapes to produce big, beautiful, and complex images that challenge the camera's single-point perspective. He is the Norwegian artist Espen Tollefsen. Espen, welcome to In Conversation.
Thank you, Alastair. Nice to be with you.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, Espen, I thought of you principally as a landscape photographer. But when I was looking at your work in preparation for our conversation today, I realized I might be wrong in that, because although your work begins with a photo, or rather a series of photos, that's just the first step of a whole series of manipulations that you perform to achieve the final image. So my question is, at what point on your photography journey did you decide that a single standalone photo just wasn't enough? It wasn't satisfying you?
That's a really good question. I'm not quite sure, but I think when I started out with my first camera, like I was 15 years old, I found out that I was like an impatient photographer. I couldn't stand still with my tripod and wait for the right light. I had to move on. And as you said, I grew up in northern Norway with this magnificent landscape around me, and I wanted to make my images of that landscape. But I couldn't stand by with the tripod and the camera, so I had to run around. I took a lot of small details. And when I came back and I went into the darkroom, and because I started out in the darkroom before the digital age, I was not satisfied with all these contact sheets with these detail shots. I wanted something different. So in the beginning of this process, I think what I started it was to like double exposure in the camera or in the darkroom and do the manipulation in the darkroom. And I also think that I got some inspiration to see other artists, which is not photographers, but artists that do collages with paper stuff and that way. Because I always loved the feeling of the paper and the tactile way of images put together. And in one way, the one-eyed camera was not enough to show what I wanted to show. And maybe the landscape I went out to and photographed was so huge, as you saw in some examples. It's impossible to make my way interpretation of that landscape into one shot. I had to go another way around to try to touch that part.
Yeah, so. I mean I mean, I think they're great. I mean, I guess we can call them collages. I suppose that's what they're, sort of photo collages. Reminded me a little of well, certainly cubism in the painting sphere, and also of some work I really love, which is similar to yours in a way. I'm thinking of the Polaroids of David Hockney.
Oh yes,
which you must be familiar with, and he would just shoot Polaroid in a similar way to you, and then put them together and create a collage that really changes the whole perspective of what you're looking of what was in front of you when you were looking at it.
Yeah,
I think they're great.
Yeah,
but and you. So you're like, I mean, I'm guessing we're of a similar generation. You like me, started working in a darkroom and taking photos, developing them and printing them. And your life must have got a whole lot easier since digital came along.
That's true.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, because I think, as I said, I'm like an impatient photographer who doesn't have time to stand still, and sometimes it was the same in the darkroom, to wait for the long process to expose and develop and rinse and dry. It took too long time for me. So when I got my first Apple Macintosh and Photoshop and the versions of layers, put them together, that was like heaven for me, because then I could go back and forth. So it's and I also understand that first time I took my eldest daughter to the darkroom for the first time for me for like 10 years, and she wanted to make a print, and she didn't understand that she couldn't go back again. It's like me on the computer to undo. I said, undo that. Why not? And that's the way I like that. That's the why I like to work on Photoshop and computer, because I can play around with it. Because the large collages with like 200-300 details and elements, it's I have to play back and forth for a long time to make it fit the way I want, or when I see, oh, this is it.
Right. I love the idea, Espen, of you taking your daughter into the darkroom, because like me, I'm sure you. I mean, the digital photography has made lives a lot easier in many ways, but there's a lot of the magic's gone out of it now, and the actual craft of photography. And we're going to come on to that a little bit later when talking about what you do with glass. But I mean, there are times when I miss the magic of seeing a print come up in the developer, and I love the idea of your daughter saying, "Well, could we just go back?" That's lovely. What kind of just because I know some people watching will be interested in technique. What kind of camera do you use? What sort of format are you using now?
I use like a standard Canon.
35mm, yeah.
Yes. So I'm not that into the technical part of the newest and the best, and because when I do the collages, it's like I fit a lot of images together, so the file size is never a problem for me. So I just need a camera that is easy to use and easy to get with me, and
whatever does the job. It's obvious that your main subject is the Norwegian landscape, and you spend a lot of time on an island called Andøya, which is right up at the top of Norway. I've sailed past it before. It's inside the Arctic Circle. It sounds like a rather desolate and remote place. Could you describe it for us, for anyone who hasn't been to that part of the world?
There's an island. Most people know about Lofoten, the islands of Lofoten, and Andøya is the northernmost island of Vesterålen, which is on the north side of Lofoten. So as you see on the screen, there's on the west coast, on the tip you have Andenes. On the west coast you have a small village called Nøss. That's where my father grew up, and they was mother and father and 8 children. He was the youngest one, and it was a traditional fisherman farmer place. They had one cow and 1 pig and 8 sheep, and went out fishing, and that's the way they lived. And they had this. You see this. I can see you have this image of this large fields, because there's an island which a big contrast between the large areas of fields that contrasted in the mountains. Certainly starts and then go up to like only 100 meters, but then they feel like huge when we stand there by the sea. In this picture you see the village and the house and the studio and the house where my father grew up on, just in the corner in the bay. So it's facing the sea, and next stop is Greenland. So it's far out. So
and you mentioned your father. I mean, you come from a family of artists. Am I correct in saying that? You're both your father and your mother are artists?
Yes. As I said, my father was the youngest one in this family, but he started up as a house painter. So there was no way that he could even think about being an artist, but there was no artist in the area at all. So he started as a house painter, and then went to Oslo as a house painter, but also started to do this sketching and drawing classes. And I think he had a dream to continue in that direction, because he applied for the art academy, and he went to the art academy for 3 years. So then he stepped up from a house painter to a painter, to an artist, and I think I got a lot of influence from his work, because he is like a modernist painter, but always based in nature and elements from the nature and the nature he grew up in, and the light and the colors. And he has his teacher, his professor was a cubist professor, I think, who influenced him a lot. And I think that influence also came back on me when I grew up on this his studio, and smelling the color, the turpentine oil colors, and all these lovely names from the umbra and the name of the colors. So, and my mother was into arts and crafts, and specialized in weaving. So, and after their education in Oslo, they went back to up north, where they came from, because they had this dream of continuing as artists and into arts and crafts, but in the area where they grew up, and not stay in Oslo. It was a difficult choice, because in all the colleagues was in Oslo. There was not many artists in that area, and especially not in Vesterålen. He was the only visual artist in that area. So I think it was a lonely way of doing his art. He got inspirations from then. There was a lot of stuff going on in the 70s. The artists in northern Norway got together and in a new union, and inspired each other to continue the work. And also that time they had these grants. They got this grant from the state to continue as artists.
Right. So, yeah, quite a brave decision. Espen, a long time ago, Espen, I shared a house with a writer and a potter and a sculptor and a jewelry maker, and it was, I've never forgotten it. It was amazing how the air was just crackling with creativity as we all subconsciously inspired each other. And it was something I thought would be interesting to talk about, was the importance of when you're being a creative person, of being with other creative people, and the way that inspiration flows between. Because I mean, photographers, you're an exception. I'm more typical, I think, in the sense that a lot of photographers are not very good at mixing with other photographers. We tend to be rather individualistic and solitary in the way we work, and not be good at collaborating in associations or collectives. But you're very different. You're much more, I think, you're much more open to the idea of mixing with other artists, and perhaps having that transfer of inspiration between you, because you belong to various associations and galleries and groups, don't you?
Yes, I do, and I think that inspiration from my family, that it was my father with the painting, and my mother with weaving and the art and crafts, and also my younger sister is into art. She also started out with arts and crafts and textile, but now more into digital art and doing her own designs and pictures and I think we inspire each other. And my wife is a fiction writer, so I think I got something from her.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So and I'm a part of this Nordnorske Bildende Kunstnere, which is the organization of artists in Norway, and I think I got more inspired by some of those artists than from some of the photographers I know. But I like to mix. I like to do something inspired, maybe by take the best from photography and take it over to another.
Yeah.
And mix it. Like you said, I'm also working with glass and project with glass, and that's a different field again. So.
Well, we'll come on to the glass, but I've known your work for some time because there's a lot of it on the Viking ships.
Yes.
Both the river ships, particularly the river ships, but on the ocean ships as well. Just tell me, how did that relationship start? And have you been on board the ships and seen your work?
No, I haven't. So I was supposed to go to these Viking river cruises when they started out in 2011. I made these landscape for those river cruise ships for a couple of years or many years. But I haven't seen on board. I only seen the pictures, and they look really nice on board. And it started out with a company that's called International Corporate Art, which I worked a lot with, together with. And they said they had this new client, the Viking River Cruises, and they thought my images and my way of showing the landscape of Norway and other Norway was perfect for their ships.
Yeah, this one, the one we're looking at now, is the stockfish. I know it very well because it's in the World Cafe on the ocean ships.
Yeah.
Just for anybody who doesn't know, just explain what's going on in that picture.
Well, that's one of my few one-shot pictures, because that's actually not a collage, because the stockfish was so perfect hanged on this this rig for the stockfish. So it's had this wonderful perspective and this one point disappearing, and it was just perfect for one shot. So, and this is something I grew up with, the smell of the cod drying, this fiskehjell, to be dry enough to make this bacalao or something like that.
I know that smell. Yes. And I believe you have a new commission piece on the new ocean ship, the Viking Mars. Is that right?
Yes, I think they also bought this some of these stockfish pictures, but also some of the some new pictures, which is more like I call them only constructions, because they're not the landscapes; they're more like buildings and compositions from the city, actually. So I got another way with those pictures, but those pictures most of the Viking Ocean picture are those of I call them flying pine, which is the tree who flies on their own, which is example of the way I do these collages, and that one. Yes, it starts out with my idea is when yes, thank you. It's like when you are a child and you're lying on the ground and looking up at the trees, and you feel like you are flying in a way. You feel the light, and you see the sky, and you see the tree is flying out in a way. But when you try to photograph it, the stem is always in the way, so you don't get the lightness. And then I started out, how could I do this? How could I get around the stem? So I took just small parts of the tree and put them together, and tried to puzzle them together to get away with the stem. And then they started to live their own life, because when they puzzled them together, and they had to fit, because in one way I want my collages to be the way that when you see it, the first second you see it, you believed it. Do you believe that's something that fits together? And then the other second, this is something, it's not quite right. So that's what I wanted with those trees, that should fly away on their own. And the first second, the viewers should say, oh, wow. And then second, what's going on here? So, so when I start out with a new tree, I don't know which way it goes. And they got their own personality when on the way to the finished collage. So
I think they're great. Your work is not only shown in galleries and on Viking ships, Espen, but also in offices and schools around Norway, where they're particularly effective at bringing the landscape indoors and into an environment which is often maybe not that exciting because they're offices. And I think they completely transform the feel of the space that they occupy. Really, they're wonderful. And I'm glad you seem to have had a lot of success with that. That's just great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to work to open up spaces inside a room or a building, and it's also like this picture is from a school up in Northern Norway, where this collage on it's actually Andøya, so it's all the different type of landscape on Andøya puzzled together in one piece. So for the kids who goes to the school, the children know the landscape, but I want to do another interpretation of the landscape. So to remind them that what is well known could be seen in different ways. It's what you see and what you perceive is two different things. So I want to open up and to tell that this is a different way to see it.
Yeah,
something that is well known. And,
fantastic. But let's turn to the way that you combine photographs and glass to produce what I think are really stunning pieces. They're definitely my favorite pieces that you produce, which look amazing when they're again incorporated into buildings. Can you explain what's going on with your glass pieces and what the technique is?
We use different kinds ways to get around it and different techniques. And like you see there, it's from the Glasnerei Peters in Germany, southern German, and they do old techniques with the enamel color, which they transfer to the glasses, and then they burn it into the glasses. And they do their interpretation of my photographs in a way. So we started out with the first project we did together was actually for a church in Berlin. Competition I won, and they saw my images and said, "Oh, this is perfect to paint." And I said, "How come?" I want my photograph to be like I did my collage or photograph, just printed on the glass. But they said, "Oh, we have these old techniques that do it even better," and especially because the pictures or the image for the competition was like 90% of it is out of focus, this blurred feeling, which is something very special with photography and it's not easily done when painting. But they said this is perfect for us to make it with a kind of airbrush technique, transfer to the glass with enamel colors, and then we burn it into the glass. And then you can keep these really rich colors. Well, they get out of this enamel colors, and you also can use the technique of, like here is all the 11 glasses from the church. You can use the sandblast techniques to get up the highlights of an image, because that was the first lesson when we printed something on glass. The highlights disappeared, because when it's like in photo, white is like nothing.
Okay.
And but when you put it on glass, nothing. You just see through the glasses. So you have to rebuild the whiteness and the highlights. And they did it with this sandblast by hand and transferred it into the glass in the areas I wanted. So we can do it in different grades of sandblasting. And also could use the brush to paint, and also use this technique they call the slumped glass, which is like a three-dimensional glass you put on top to get this relief techniques. So I thought this was really something different, but in combination with the photograph and the old craft techniques together, it came out so nice.
I think the ones of the particularly the church. I mean, and also you've done some in a rather beautiful pieces in a hospital quiet room.
Yeah.
And they work really well in a kind of, this is the one I'm talking about actually it's great from the interior, but it's also pretty interesting from the exterior as well. There's something, they have a kind of spiritual feel to them, which is what I'm saying. They're very calming, I think they're just fantastic. You must be really excited when the first one came out.
Oh yes, I was, and also with the size of it, because I choose to do these projects with small parts of the nature. It's like the small leaves or small parts of a bush photographed with a macro lens that makes this just small part in focus, and the rest is blurred and out of focus. So it goes into different layers only with this first part to the way I photograph it. And when you got the light into it as well, you have another part. So you got the light back to photography, because to photograph is to paint with light, but then you have the actual image on the glass, and then you have the light as an extra player in the game to when the light is shifting, the image is shifting in its expression now. So, and here is from the Werkstatt, where they are trying to make an interpretation of the light reflections in the image, because from this one I think I was photographing, like I put my head and my macro lens into the small grass and leaves, and was trying to find another huge landscape in this small part in Andøya, not the large mountains and the huge sea and scenery, but and then when this was enlarged on the glasses, it was really interesting to see what happened then.
Yeah. James, can we show my favorite one? The one of the water wall, I call it. It's one that's in an office, and this one, I just love this one. In my dream home, when I'm fantastically wealthy, I would just love to have a whole wall like this. It's great. And it would be almost interesting to do a sort of time lapse of it during the day and see how because it must change a lot, as the color of the light changes. And
it does. Yeah. And this was actually, sorry.
I just love the idea of something changing with the light completely. I mean, it gives it a whole new sort of dimension. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, you can just sit there in your chair and see the light is shifting and the image is changing during the day. And this was actually the first project I did on glasses for this office. And and my agent was wondering how to do this and do the right choices during the process, because we understand it's going to be like 100 square meters with glass and with the seascapes on glass, and you have to decide what kind of colors and the density and how much you want to see through it. So we actually a guy, and a really nice guy in London, who is called Andrew Moore, who's a glass art consultant, who just gave us the right way to get through it and take down the colors and the details, and told us that on some glasses you can add like just even so few details that it only appears in special times during the day.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. So yeah, that's great.
Like a sea, a gray surface of the sea, but when the light turns in, you see the horizon or a small island, and do it like some, turn it down.
And the glassworks, what you do? Are you doing them now? Is this something you're involved in right now, or was it something have you done it and moved on to something else?
I still do projects on glass, yeah. So I'm doing some project for in Narvik for a forest station actually. So then I'm playing with more like details from water and things that don't look like fire, but it actually have no colors, and it is more black and white. So yes, I'm still into it, and I'm playing with it. And
yeah, forward to seeing that.
It's an expensive way to do pictures on glass, so I need a client that can afford it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Norway is full of clients that can afford it, I'm sure. Or maybe not anymore. But, let's talk about Air Nos.
Yes.
It's on the island we talked about earlier, where you go and spend a lot of time, Andøya, and it's a kind of house or a cabin, and it's called Air Nos, which is right beside the ocean, and it can be. And you rent it out to, if I got that right, you rent it out to artists who can just go and stay there and be inspired by the landscape?
Yes, because this is on the property where my father grew up, and just behind the small house when he grew up, and we have our own gallery, which is started to have like a summer gallery, but now it's open year round. Where all the family is showing our work. But in that process, I wanted a new place to work and a new house and more space so I could stay there for a longer time up north. But I also wanted a space I could share with other artists. So we started this artist in residency Enus. So you can't apply, but we invite other artists to do projects up there. So as you showed on one picture, we had a composer and a pianist. She went up there with her own piano. Oh my God! And
love it. Yeah. I mean, are they comfortable? Can you cook in them and everything? They have cooking facilities and showers.
Yes. And it's really well built because it's in the wintertime it could be stormy. So and that was one of my ideas of big building like a house which had a lot of space inside, so you can see the light shifting and see the nature outside, and because the old houses was built in another way, more like they wanted to with small windows, and they wanted to cover up when the storm was coming in. But I want to be watching the storm and the waves coming by. So
I think I might be a client for you in the future, because I just love I love the idea. Just go to stay maybe a week and just see what happened. I mean, something would happen. It might be slightly weird at the beginning because it's pretty isolated, but it would be, I think something would come out of it. And I can't decide whether I'd want to do it in the winter or the summer. I think I love the idea of being in a storm and having flash against the windows. It's fantastic.
I was up there for a month ago, and then the house was like vibrating because of the storm was so strong. But it was it's an experience, and it's such a difference between the pitch black winter time and the midnight sun and this.
Yes.
When the sky opens up and the landscape opens up, and it's something different. Yes, so you should come on both in winter time and summertime. Yeah,
I'd love to. Yeah, I think it'd be really inspiring just to be there. And talking of being inspiring, Espen, tell me about the workshops. You give workshops to children about photography.
Yes.
And yeah, so what is the basic idea behind that? What are you trying to teach them? I
try to teach them the same thing as I do when I do my own collages, to see your neighborhood or your surrounding in a different way. So my first workshop was called My Gaze, My Mountain. It was like build your own mountain, but every child got a package of small images which I had made, and they got the same selection of details from a landscape or a mountain, and then they had to build their own landscape out of it and make their own mountain. And I think what I wanted to show them that it's your own eye work differently than the camera eye, and that you have your own perception of your surroundings, and to put them together, you make your own work of, you can call it work of art, but you make your own picture of your neighborhood or a mountain which you know, but you do it your own way. And all the children could be like 20 children put together, and I say no one of you is going to make the same image, even if you start with the same parts to do the collage. So I think the kids like it very much. And then the next project was not with a mountain, but I did it in south of Norway, and I did a selection of images of the surroundings in Lillestrøm, and then they put it together in the way they wanted. If they wanted to see and make an image their own way.
I think it's a lovely idea, and I imagine children, they're very open to they're not trapped by preconceptions. They're very open to just, let's make our own mountain, no problem. I love that.
No, and then like feel free and do it your own way, and it's so inspiring also for me to see how they make their own collages. So
lovely, Espen. I think we've come to the end of our conversation, but it's been fantastic talking with you, and really inspiring too. And I particularly, I'm going to look more into this glass process. I think it's really interesting, and maybe I'll come up and see you in Ernøs one day.
Yes, Ernøs and Atlenes, yes, which is our gallery. So you're very welcome. So,
I'd love to do. I'd love to do that. So thank you so much for giving us your time, Espen.
Thank you.
And I wish you well. Photographers, we say to each other, we say, I wish you good light.
Thank you. Same to you. Good light.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you, Espen. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for watching. And I hope you found it as inspiring as I did. So until the next time, from me, Alastair, and from all the backroom team at Viking.TV, thank you and see you again soon. Goodbye.